In the high-stakes world of billion-dollar equity deals, a single word can cost a fortune. But on a rainy Tuesday in Manhattan, inside the most exclusive restaurant on 57th Street, silence was the most expensive thing on the menu. A waitress, invisible to the titans of industry around her, leaned in and whispered 5 words that would dismantle an international conspiracy and save a tech mogul from total ruin. She didn't have a weapon. She didn't have a lawyer. She just had a perfect command of a German dialect that shouldn't have existed in that room. When the dust settled, 3 people were in handcuffs. And the waitress? She was gone. This is the story of how Evelyn Hope changed history between the appetizer and the entree. New York City runs on 2 distinct currents: the people who own the skyscrapers and the people who polish the glass. Evelyn Hope knew exactly which current she was drowning in. At 28 years old, Evelyn was a ghost. To the patrons of l'Orangerie, a fortress of culinary pretension nestled near Central Park, she was nothing more than a pair of floating hands that refilled water glasses and replaced silverware. She possessed a master's degree in Germanic linguistics from the University of Heidelberg, a mountain of student debt that kept her awake until 4 a.m., and a uniform that smelled perpetually of truffle oil and quiet desperation. It was October 14th, 2023. The city was battered by an autumn storm, rain lashing against the windows of the restaurant, blurring the lights of the city outside into streaks of gold and charcoal. Inside, the atmosphere was pressurized. Noah, the maître d', with a smile like a shark and the soul of an accountant, cornered Evelyn by the espresso machine. "Table 4 is yours tonight, Hope," Noah hissed, adjusting his silk tie. "And if you drop so much as a crumb, don't bother coming in tomorrow." Evelyn nodded, keeping her eyes on the floor. "Who is it, Noah?" "Elias Ryan," he said, dropping the name like a heavy stone. Evelyn felt a cold spike in her chest. Elias Ryan wasn't just a billionaire. He was the billionaire. The architect of Ryan Dynamics, the man who had revolutionized battery storage for EVs. He was the current darling of Wall Street, known for his ruthless efficiency and his staggering impatience. He was also known for being legally vulnerable at this exact moment. Rumors of a liquidity crisis were swirling in the Financial Times. He needed a win. He needed a partner. "He's meeting with the von Hoffmanns," Noah continued, wiping a smudge from a menu. "Old European money, German aristocracy. They are looking to acquire a 40% stake in Ryan's European division. This is a 10-figure dinner, Evelyn. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not breathe too loudly. You are furniture. Understood?" "Understood," Evelyn whispered. She prepped her station with mechanical precision. She knew the drill. The wealthy didn't pay for the food. They paid for the illusion of perfection. They paid to be treated like gods in a temple of linens and crystal. But Evelyn had a secret weapon, one that Noah and the guests never bothered to consider. People assume waitresses are uneducated. They assume that because you are serving them steak tartare, you don't understand the intricacies of the conversation happening 3 feet away. They assume you don't speak their language, and for the von Hoffmanns, that assumption was going to be a fatal error. By 7:30 p.m., the restaurant was humming with the low, expensive murmur of the elite. Evelyn stood by the service station, her posture perfect, watching the door. When Elias Ryan walked in, the room seemed to tilt toward him. He looked tired. He was younger than he appeared in magazines, maybe early 40s, but the grey at his temples was spreading. He wore a suit that cost more than Evelyn's entire education, yet he wore it with the discomfort of a man who would rather be in a lab coat. He sat at table 4, the prime corner booth, ordering a sparkling water and checking his watch 3 times in the span of a minute. He was nervous. 10 minutes later, The sharks arrived. Heinrich and Clara von Hoffmann were a study in European elegance. Heinrich was tall, silver-haired, wearing a bespoke double-breasted suit and a Patek Philippe watch that caught the candlelight. Clara was younger, ice-blonde, draped in velvet, moving with a predator's grace. They greeted Ryan with stiff, formal handshakes. Evelyn approached the table to pour water. "Mr. Ryan," Heinrich said, his English heavily accented, but grammatically flawless. "A pleasure to finally meet the man behind the miracles." "The pleasure is mine," Ryan replied, his voice tight. "I trust your flight from Munich was smooth?" "Private jets have a way of smoothing out the turbulence," Clara added with a thin smile. Evelyn finished pouring and stepped back into the shadows. As she retreated, she caught Heinrich's eye. He looked through her. Not at her. To him, she was part of the upholstery. That was the first mistake. The dinner began as a choreographed dance. Evelyn moved in and out of the conversation, placing appetizers, scallops with saffron foam, and retracting empty plates. She was invisible, just as Noah had ordered, but her ears were wide open. The conversation started in English. It was standard high-level corporate courtship. Heinrich spoke of synergies and legacy preservation. He talked about his family's centuries-old holdings in Bavarian steel and heavy manufacturing. He claimed the von Hoffmann Trust was looking to diversify into green energy and viewed Ryan Dynamics as the vessel for the future. Elias Ryan was eating it up. He was desperate for capital. Evelyn could see the tension leaving his shoulders with every promise Heinrich made. "We are prepared to wire the first tranche of 400 million euros by Friday," Heinrich said, slicing his scallop. "Provided, of course, the intellectual property transfer is signed tonight." Ryan hesitated. "Tonight? My legal team hasn't done the final review on the IP addendum." "Mr. Ryan," Clara interjected, her voice like silk wrapping around a knife. "We are old-fashioned. We do business eye to eye. If you do not trust us, we can take the capital to your competitors in Shenzhen. The offer expires when the dessert wine is poured." It was a classic pressure tactic. Evelyn had seen it a dozen times waiting on Wall Street types. But there was something else, a dissonance. As Evelyn cleared the appetizer plates, Heinrich leaned toward Clara. He switched to German, assuming the privacy of a foreign tongue in an American restaurant. "Der Idiot frisst es aus der Hand," Heinrich muttered rapidly. "The idiot is eating out of our hand." Evelyn froze for a microsecond, her hand hovering over a bread plate. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She kept her face blank, a mask of servitude. "Bleib ruhig," Clara replied in German, smiling sweetly at Ryan while she spoke. "Er ist verzweifelt. Wir haben ihn, sobald den Wein trinkt." "Stay calm, he is desperate. We have him as soon as he drinks the wine." Elias Ryan smiled back at them, nodding, completely oblivious that they were discussing his destruction right in front of his face. He thought they were having a private, marital moment. Evelyn retreated to the kitchen, her mind racing. This wasn't just a bad deal, it was a con. But who were they? The German they spoke was perfect, native. But there was something odd about it. In the kitchen, the noise was deafening. Chefs shouted orders, pans sizzled, and Noah was screaming about a table in the back. Evelyn leaned against the stainless steel counter, trying to breathe. "Hope, wine service for table 4, Noah barked, shoving a bottle into her hands. They ordered the 82 Latour. Careful with the cork, it's worth more than your life. She looked at the bottle. Chateau Latour, 1982, a legendary vintage. Price tag, $6,500. She had to go back out there. She had to serve the wine. And she had to decide, stay invisible and watch a man lose everything, or speak up and lose her job, and perhaps much more. As she walked back into the dining room, she analyzed what she had heard. Dialect. She had studied dialects in Heidelberg. Heinrich's accent in English was stereotypical German. But his German. It wasn't Bavarian, as he claimed his family was. It was harsh, clipped. It sounded like the street slang of Berlin, mixed with something else. Something Eastern. She approached the table. The mood had shifted. Ryan had a leather-bound folio on the table. The contract. He was holding a fountain pen, twirling it nervously. "Let's celebrate," Heinrich said, beaming. "To partnership." Evelyn presented the bottle. She went through the ritual, cutting the foil, wiping the lip, inserting the corkscrew. Heinrich turned to Clara again, speaking in that rapid-fire German, low and guttural. "Schau dir die Uhr an. Sobald unterschreibt, sind wir weg. Der Fahrer wartet an der Ecke. Look at the watch. As soon as he signs, we are gone. The driver is waiting at the corner." Hoffentlich merkt nicht, dass das Geld auf dem Treuhandkonto Falschgeld ist, Clara whispered back, barely moving her lips. Hopefully, he doesn't notice the money in the escrow account is fake. Evelyn's hand trembled. The cork made a soft pop. She poured a taste for Heinrich. He swirled it, sniffed it with exaggerated flair, and took a sip. "Exquisite," Heinrich proclaimed in English. "The earthiness of the terroir is undeniable. A true Bavarian would appreciate this soil." He was lying. Not about the wine. The wine was excellent, but about the appreciation. He drank it like it was water. Elias Ryan reached for the pen. "Well," he said, "I suppose fortune favors the bold." He opened the contract to the signature page. Evelyn felt time stop. The restaurant noise faded into a dull roar. If he signed that, he was transferring his intellectual property, the battery tech that could save the planet, to a shell company for non-existent funds. He would be bankrupt by morning. She looked at Noah, who was watching from the shadows, eyes narrowed, waiting for her to screw up. She looked at Ryan, a man who looked like he hadn't slept in a month. Evelyn stepped forward to pour Ryan's glass. She moved into the space between Ryan and Heinrich. She leaned in, ostensibly to wipe a drop of wine from the base of Ryan's glass with her serviette. Her face was inches from Elias Ryan's ear. The von Hoffmans were watching the wine, greedy anticipation in their eyes. Evelyn took a breath. She didn't shout. She didn't cause a scene. She simply let the mask slip for one terrifying second. She spoke in English, but she used a tone that commanded immediate, primal attention. "Don't sign," she whispered. Ryan froze. His hand halted halfway to the paper. He looked up, startled, his eyes locking onto hers. He saw something in the waitress's face he hadn't expected. Intelligence. Ferocity. "Excuse me?" Ryan said aloud, confusion in his voice. Heinrich and Clara stiffened. "Is there a problem with the service?" Heinrich snapped. Evelyn stood up straight. She turned to Heinrich, and then she dropped the bomb. She looked him dead in the eye and spoke in flawless, academic, high German. But she laced it with the specific, gritty street dialect she had heard them using. "Ihr Akzent ist verrutscht, Herr von Hoffmann," she said clearly, her voice cutting through the ambient music. "Und echte Bayern trinken ihren Wein nicht wie Wasser." "Your accent slipped, Mr. von Hoffmann, and real Bavarians don't drink their wine like water." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a predator, realizing the prey has teeth. Clara's face went pale. Heinrich's charming smile vanished, replaced by a look of cold, hard malice. "What did you say?" Heinrich hissed in English, standing up slowly. Evelyn didn't back down. She turned to Elias Ryan. "Mr. Ryan, this isn't a real one. The deal isn't real. They are speaking about a getaway driver and a fake escrow account. They aren't Bavarian. They're running a short con." The restaurant went still. Noah was sprinting toward the table, his face purple with rage. "Hope! What the hell are you doing?" But Elias Ryan wasn't looking at the manager. He was looking at his partners. He saw the panic in Clara's eyes. He saw the sweat suddenly beading on Heinrich's forehead. Ryan slowly capped his pen. "Is that true, Heinrich?" Ryan asked, his voice dropping an octave. "What did she just say to you?" Heinrich glared at Evelyn. If looks could kill, she would have been dead on the floor. "The girl is crazy. She is a waitress. She is likely on drugs. Noah, get this trash out of here immediately, or I will buy this building and fire you myself." Noah grabbed Evelyn's arm, his grip bruising. "You're fired, Hope. Get out, now." "Let go of her," Ryan said. He didn't shout, but the authority in his voice stopped Noah cold. Ryan stood up. He was 6'2", and suddenly he looked every inch the titan of industry. He looked at Evelyn. "Repeat what they said. In English." Exact words. Evelyn took a breath, shaking Noah's hand off her arm. The woman said, "Hopefully he doesn't notice the money in the escrow account is fake." The man said, "The driver is waiting at the corner." Ryan turned to Heinrich. "Escrow account? That's funny. My bank was having trouble verifying the routing number this morning. You said it was a European holiday delay." Heinrich reached into his jacket. "Don't," Evelyn warned, stepping back. The tension broke. Heinrich didn't pull a gun. He pulled a phone. "The deal is off," he spat. "Come, Clara." They moved to leave, knocking over the $6,000 bottle of Latour. Red wine bled across the white tablecloth like a gunshot wound. "Sit down," Ryan barked. "You have no authority here," Heinrich shouted, his accent suddenly sounding very American, the German pretense dropping entirely in his panic. "Actually," a voice boomed from the entrance, "I think he does." Everyone turned. Two large men in dark suits were blocking the exit. Ryan's private security detail. They had been waiting in the car, but Ryan must have hit a panic button under the table, or perhaps he had just signaled them through the window. But the real twist wasn't the security. It was what happened next. Heinrich looked at Evelyn, his eyes full of venom. "You stupid girl. You have no idea who you just messed with." Evelyn looked at the shattered wine bottle, then back at him. "I know exactly who you are," she said, her voice trembling but defiant. "You're the man who doesn't know the difference between the accusative and dative case in Bavarian dialect. You're a fraud." Ryan looked at Evelyn. "Who are you?" "I'm just the waitress," she said. "Not anymore," Ryan replied. The seconds following the confrontation stretched out like warm taffy. In the center of l'Orangerie, the shattered bottle of Chateau Latour 82 continued to bleed into the plush cream carpet, the aroma of fermented grapes mixing sharply with the scent of fear. Evelyn Hope stood anchored to the floor, her hands trembling violently by her sides. The adrenaline that had propelled her to whisper into a billionaire's ear was now crashing, leaving her cold and nauseous. "Nobody moves," said the lead security officer, a man with a neck the size of a tree trunk and eyes that scanned the room for weapons. His name was Cole, and he didn't look like he belonged in a Michelin-starred restaurant. Heinrich von Hoffmann, or whatever his real name was, had slumped back into the leather booth. The arrogance had drained from his face, replaced by the cornered, feral look of a rat in a trap. Clara sat frozen, her manicured hand gripping her clutch bag so tight her knuckles were white. "This is kidnapping," Heinrich spat, though his voice lacked its earlier booming authority. "You cannot hold us here. I will have your badge. I will have your head." "I don't have a badge," Cole said calmly, "and Mr. Ryan pays me enough to not worry about my head. Sit still." Noah, the restaurant manager, was hyperventilating near the kitchen pass. He looked at Evelyn with a mixture of horror and fury. In his mind, she hadn't just saved a customer. She had turned his dining room into a crime scene. "Evelyn," Noah hissed, stepping forward but stopping short when Cole raised a hand. "You, look at what you've done. The disruption. The guests." "Quiet, Noah," Elias Ryan said. He hadn't moved from his seat. He was staring at the contract on the table, the ink of the unsigned signature line mocking him. He looked up at Evelyn. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and currently unreadable. "You said they mentioned a driver," Ryan said to her, his voice low. "Yes," Evelyn replied, her voice barely a whisper. "At the corner." Ryan tapped his earpiece. "Cole, tell the detail outside to block the black Mercedes S-Class on the corner of 57th and 6th. Don't let it move." "Copy," Cole murmured. The reaction from Clara was instantaneous. She lunged. It wasn't a sophisticated move, just a desperate scramble over the table, scattering crystal glasses and silver forks. She wasn't trying to attack Ryan. She was trying to grab the phone Heinrich had placed on the tablecloth. She needed to send a signal. Burn the evidence. Abort. Cole moved with terrifying speed. He intercepted her before she crossed the center line of the table, grabbing her wrist with a restraint that was firm but professional. "Sit down, Mum," Cole said. Clara shrieked, a sound that finally shattered the polite silence of the other diners. "He is hurting me. Help! Police!" "They're on their way," Ryan said dryly. Evelyn backed away, bumping into a service cart. She felt like an intruder in her own life. She looked around the room. The other diners, captains of industry, socialites, tourists, were all staring at her. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was the center of a very expensive storm. Waitresses aren't supposed to be heroes. They are supposed to be background noise. Evelyn felt the sudden, crushing weight of reality. She had just accused two powerful people of fraud based on overheard whispers. What if she was wrong? What if she had misheard a colloquialism? What if fake money was some sort of rich people slang she didn't understand? Her stomach turned. "Oh God," she thought, "I'm going to jail." Sirens began to wail outside, a rising crescendo that pierced the heavy rain. Blue and red lights washed over the interior of the restaurant, strobing against the gold leaf ceiling. The doors burst open. It wasn't the beat cops. It was two detectives in plain clothes, followed by 4 uniformed officers. The lead detective was a woman in a soaking wet trench coat, looking exhausted and irritated. She flashed a badge. "NYPD. Major crimes. Who called it in?" "I did," Ryan said, standing up. "Elias Ryan." The detective blinked, recognizing the face from the news. "Mr. Ryan. Detective Miller. We got a call about an attempted grand larceny in progress." "Attempted," Ryan nodded, gesturing to the couple in the booth. "Thanks to her." He pointed at Evelyn. Detective Miller turned her gaze to Evelyn. It wasn't a look of admiration. It was the cold, calculating look of a cop assessing a suspect. "The waitress?" Miller asked. "She speaks the language," Ryan said. Heinrich stood up now, buttoning his jacket, attempting to regain dignity. "Officer, thank God you are here. This man is holding us hostage. This waitress is clearly deranged, perhaps an accomplice to a robbery scheme, making up lies to distract." "Save it for the station," Miller cut him off. She signaled the uniformed officers. "Cuff 'em." The humiliation was absolute. Heinrich and Clara were spun around, their wrists zip-tied behind their backs. As the officers marched them past the service station, Heinrich stopped for a fraction of a second next to Evelyn. The police officer shoved him forward, but not before Heinrich leaned in. The fake Bavarian accent was gone, replaced by a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "Du bist tot," he whispered. "You are dead." Evelyn flinched. Get him out of here, Miller barked. As the scammers were hauled out into the rain, the restaurant didn't return to normal. It felt broken. Noah stormed up to Evelyn. Get your things, he spat, his face red. You're done. I don't care if you saved the Pope. You caused a scene at l'Orangerie. You're fired. Get out. Evelyn nodded, tears finally stinging her eyes. She untied her apron, her hands shaking so hard she fumbled the knot. She placed the apron on the counter next to the dirty dishes. Wait, Ryan's voice cut through the noise. He walked over to the service station. Up close, he smelled of expensive cologne and rain. He looked at Noah. She's not fired, Noah. She just quit, because I'm hiring her. Noah's jaw dropped. Ryan turned to Evelyn. He didn't smile. He looked at her with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. You need to come with us to the precinct. You're the primary witness. And after that, we have a lot to talk about. I have a shift tomorrow, Evelyn stammered, clinging to the familiar logic of her poverty. Evelyn, Ryan said softly, you just stopped a $400 million heist. You don't have shifts anymore. The 19th precinct was a stark contrast to l'Orangerie. Where the restaurant was gold and velvet, the precinct was linoleum and fluorescent hum. It smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Evelyn sat in interview room B. It was a grey box with a metal table bolted to the floor. She had been sitting there for 2 hours. They had taken her phone. They had taken her statement. But they hadn't let her go. The door opened, and Detective Miller walked in, carrying 2 styrofoam cups. She slid one across the table to Evelyn. Black coffee. Best we got, Miller said, sitting down heavily. Am I under arrest? Evelyn asked, wrapping her cold hands around the cup for warmth. No, Miller said, eyeing her. But you have to admit it's a weird story, Miss Hope. You're a waitress at a high-end joint. You've been there 6 months. Before that, you were... Where? Grad school, Evelyn said. Germany. Heidelberg. Right. Linguistics. Miller looked at her notepad. And you just happened to be standing at the exact right table, at the exact right time, to hear a specific dialect that blows the cover of 2 international con artists. Evelyn stiffened. I was doing my job. I was refilling water. Or, Miller leaned in. You were the inside woman. Maybe the cut they offered you wasn't big enough. Maybe you decided to flip on them to get a reward from Ryan. I don't know them, Evelyn's voice rose. I heard them mocking him. They called him an idiot. We ran their prints, Miller said, leaning back. Heinrich von Hoffmann doesn't exist. His real name is Viktor Volkov, Russian national, wanted by Interpol for wire fraud in Zurich, London, and Singapore. The woman is Katya Sorel, French national, forgery expert. Evelyn gasped. Russian? But his German was perfect. He's a pro, they both are, Miller said. But here's the thing, Evelyn. Volkov isn't a freelancer. He works for the Vori V Zakon, the Russian mob, specifically a syndicate that targets tech transfers. Miller let that hang in the air. You just cost the Russian mob nearly $500 million. If you are part of this, tell me now. I can protect you. If you lie to me, and we find a Venmo payment from Volkov in your history, you're going to prison for 20 years. I am a waitress, Evelyn said, tears spilling over. I have $40,000 in student debt. I live in a studio apartment in Queens with a radiator that doesn't work. Check my bank account. You'll find the $12 and a charge for cat food. Miller stared at her for a long, agonizing minute, assessing the fear in her eyes. Finally, the detective sighed. All right, I believe you. The door buzzed and opened. Elias Ryan stood there. He had lost the suit jacket and loosened his tie. He looked exhausted, but his energy was manic. "Detective, are you done terrifying her?" Ryan asked. "Just doing due diligence, Mr. Ryan," Miller said, standing up. "She's clean, as far as I can tell." "Good. Can I have the room?" Miller hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes, then I need her to sign the affidavit." Miller left, closing the heavy steel door. Ryan pulled out the metal chair opposite Evelyn and sat down. He didn't look like a billionaire now. He looked like a man who had just looked over the edge of a cliff. "You saved my life tonight," Ryan said quietly. "Not just my company. My life. If that deal had gone through, the board would have ousted me. I would have been liable for the fraud. It would have been the end." Evelyn wiped her eyes. "You're welcome. I need to ask you something, Evelyn, and I need you to be honest." Ryan placed a file on the table. It was a photocopy of a document found on Volkov. "The police can't read this. It's coded, but it's written in that same dialect you heard." "Can you read it?" Evelyn looked at the paper. It was a ledger. Numbers, dates, and scribbled notes in the margins. She squinted. The handwriting was jagged. The words were German, but twisted. Slang. "Kalter Speicher, Berlin, dritte Ebene," she read. "Rot Witwe zahlt doppelt." "What does it mean?" Ryan asked, leaning forward. "Cold storage, Berlin, 3rd level," Evelyn translated. "And Red Widow pays double." Ryan's face went pale. Red Widow. "Does that mean something to you?" Ryan stood up and paced the small room. "It's a project code name, a project I shut down 3 years ago because it was too dangerous. It was an AI-driven battery management system. If it overheated, it didn't just fail, it exploded. Someone is trying to resurrect it." He turned to Evelyn. "Evelyn, Volkov and Sorel were just the delivery system. The people who hired them, this Red Widow, they are still out there, and they think I have the encryption key for that tech. So give it to the police," Evelyn said. "I can't. It involves classified defense contracts. If I bring the feds in, they seize my company. I have to find out who the Red Widow is and stop them before they try again." Ryan placed his hands on the table. "I need a translator. Not just someone who speaks German. Someone who understands the nuances. Someone who can hear a lie in the tone of a voice. You heard Volkov slip when no one else did. You have an ear for deception." "I'm a waitress," Evelyn repeated, feeling like a broken record. "No," Ryan said firmly. "You are a linguist with a master's degree who has been wasting her talent pouring wine for idiots. I am offering you a job, my personal consultant. We are going to go through every document, every recording, every meeting Volkov had." "Mr. Ryan, that man threatened to kill me," Evelyn whispered. "He said, 'You are dead.'" "I know," Ryan said. "That is why you can't go back to your apartment in Queens. If they know who you are, and they will find out, you are a target. They know you are the reason the deal failed." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a black card. "Come work for me. I will pay off your student debt, all of it, tomorrow, plus a salary of $200,000 a year. You will live in my secure compound. You will have 24-hour protection." Evelyn stared at him. The numbers were staggering. It was freedom, but it was also a golden cage. "And if I say no?" "Then you walk out that door," Ryan said honestly. "And you pray that Volkov's friends don't find you before the police find them." Evelyn looked at the flickering fluorescent light. She thought about the shattered wine glass. She thought about the thrill of power she felt when she whispered those words. "Don't sign." She looked at Elias Ryan. "I don't speak Russian," she said. Ryan smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen. "That's fine. We'll hire a tutor. Do we have a deal?" Evelyn took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of stale coffee and fear. Deal. The ride to Elias Ryan's penthouse was silent. The car was a massive armored SUV that felt more like a vault than a vehicle. Evelyn watched the city streak by through bulletproof glass that was thick enough to distort the streetlights. They arrived at the spire, a needle of glass and steel piercing the Manhattan skyline. Ryan lived at the very top, in a triplex that was technically a residence, but functioned more like a command center. The elevator ride took 45 seconds to climb 90 floors. When the doors opened, Evelyn wasn't greeted by the warmth of a home, but by the hum of technology. The air was filtered, cool, and smelled of nothing. Absence of scent was the ultimate luxury in New York. "Cole will show you to the guest wing," Ryan said, handing his coat to a silent staff member. He didn't look at Evelyn. He was already typing on a tablet. "Get some sleep. We start at 06 and near Tos." "Mr. Ryan," Evelyn said, standing in the foyer, hugging her own arms. She was still wearing her waitress uniform, now stained with wine and sweat. It felt ridiculous in this cathedral of wealth. "My cat. In Queens. Someone needs to feed him." Ryan stopped. He looked back at her, and for a moment the billionaire mask slipped. He looked like a man who had forgotten that normal problems existed. "Cole," Ryan said, "send a team to Queens, retrieve the cat, bring her clothes, and check the apartment for bugs." "Yes, sir," Cole grunted. "Thank you," Evelyn whispered. Her room was larger than her entire apartment. The walls were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a panoramic view of the storm-battered city. But as Evelyn walked to the window, she noticed something disturbing. There was no latch, no handle. The glass was sealed shut. She wasn't a guest. She was an asset in storage. She showered, scrubbing the smell of l'orangerie off her skin. She put on a plush robe that hung in the closet, feeling like an imposter. She sat on the edge of the king-sized bed and checked her bank account on her phone. The balance, usually hovering around $40, had changed. 40 $40. And then a notification from her student loan provider. Paid in full. Evelyn stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. She should have felt relief. She should have been jumping on the bed. Instead, she felt a heavy, sinking dread. The debt was gone, but so was her agency. She had been bought. She couldn't sleep. The silence of the penthouse was oppressive. At 3 a.m., she wandered out into the hallway. The lights were dimmed to a low, amber glow. She followed the faint sound of a voice. She found the library. It was a massive room lined with physical books, a rarity for a tech mogul. In the center of the room, Elias Ryan was sitting in a leather chair, staring at a holographic display floating above a coffee table. He was watching the security footage from the restaurant. He was watching the moment Evelyn leaned in to whisper to him. He had it on a loop. Lean in. Whisper. Pull back. "You have excellent posture," Ryan said without turning around. Evelyn froze in the doorway. "I couldn't sleep." "Neither can I," Ryan said. He swiped his hand, and the hologram changed. It became a complex web of faces, names, and bank accounts. "I built this company from a garage in Palo Alto. I thought the hard part was the engineering, making a battery that doesn't die. It turns out the engineering is easy. The hard part is knowing who is holding the knife behind your back." Evelyn walked further into the room. The police said it was the Russian mob, Volkov. "Volkov is a hammer," Ryan said, standing up and pouring himself a glass of whiskey. He didn't offer her one. "You don't get angry at the hammer when it hits you. You find the hand that swings it." Volkov knew things he shouldn't have known. He knew about the escrow delays. He knew the internal IP structure. Someone inside my company fed him that information. He turned to her, his eyes bloodshot. That's why I need you, Evelyn. I can't trust my board. I can't trust my VP. I can't trust my lawyers, because one of them is the Red Widow's contact. But I don't know your company, Evelyn argued gently. I don't know business. Exactly, Ryan said. You are the only variable that wasn't part of their equation. You are outside the system, and you hear things differently. He pointed to a stack of hard drives on the desk. These are the raw audio files from Volkov's phone. The police cloned it before his lawyer forced them to seal the evidence. I have a copy. There are hours of conversations in German, Russian, and English. I need you to profile him. I need you to find the leak. Evelyn looked at the drives. This was it. The work. I need a computer, she said. And headphones. Good ones. Ryan pointed to the desk. A top-of-the-line workstation was already set up. Get to work. For the next 3 days, Evelyn lived inside the headphones. She sat in the library, surrounded by monitors, analyzing the voice of Viktor Volkov, alias Heinrich von Hoffmann. She broke his speech patterns down into spectrographs. She mapped his vowel shifts. She became intimate with the sound of his breathing. It was grueling, tedious work. Most of the recordings were useless, Volkov complaining about the weather, ordering room service, berating his partner, Clara. But Evelyn was looking for the cracks. She learned that Volkov was indeed Russian, but he had spent significant time in East Berlin during the 90s. His German was colored by the dialect of the Plattenbau districts, tough, cynical, street level. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, the rain outside had finally stopped, leaving the city scoured and grey. Evelyn was scrubbing through a recording from 2 days before the dinner. It was a phone call Volkov made from a park bench. The background noise was heavy. Traffic, wind, distant sirens. Volkov was speaking to someone he called Der Architekt. The architect. Evelyn isolated the track. She ran noise cancellation algorithms to suppress the traffic. She boosted the frequencies of the voices. Volkov sounded nervous. Es wird erledigt, aber ist vorsichtig, Volkov said. It will be done, but he is cautious. Then, the other voice answered. The voice was distorted, digital masking. It sounded like a robot grating against metal. Cautious is irrelevant. The liquidity crisis makes him vulnerable. Press the advantage. The voice spoke in English. Evelyn replayed it. Play. Rewind. Play. Rewind. Ryan walked in, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He set one down next to her. He had dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man holding up the sky. Find anything? He asked. The voice on the other end, Evelyn said, taking off her headphones. It's masked. Heavy encryption. I know. My security team already tried to demask it. It's military-grade scrambling. Dead end. Maybe for an engineer, Evelyn said, her eyes narrowing. But not for a linguist. Ryan looked at her, intrigued. Explain. You can mask the pitch, Evelyn said, pulling up the waveform on the big screen. You can change the timbre. You can make a man sound like a woman or a child. But you cannot easily mask syntax. You cannot mask prosody, the rhythm of speech, the way a person structures their thoughts. She pointed to the waveform. Listen to the phrasing. The architect says, the liquidity crisis makes him vulnerable. Press the advantage. So? Ryan asked. Standard corporate speak. No, Evelyn corrected him. It's passive-aggressive corporate speak. But look at the structure. He uses a noun phrase, liquidity crisis, as the subject of the transitive verb. It's formal, academic. But listen to the pause before. Press the advantage. It's a micropause, a rhetorical breath. It's the cadence of a lecturer. Someone used to speaking to a room that has to listen. She pulled up another file. "And listen to this," she said. "Volkov asks about the money transfer. The architect replies, 'The tranche is structured to bypass the SEC triggers. Do not deviate.'" Evelyn looked at Ryan. "Do not deviate. Who uses that phrase? Normal people say, 'Don't change the plan' or 'Stick to the script.' Do not deviate is clinical, precise." Ryan frowned. "It sounds like a lawyer. It sounds like someone who thinks they are smarter than everyone else in the room," Evelyn said. "Mr. Ryan, do you have recordings of your board meetings or your executive strategy sessions?" "I record everything," Ryan said. "I need you to play them for me. I don't need to understand the business. I just need to hear the rhythm." Ryan hesitated, then nodded. He logged into a secure server and pulled up a file from a board meeting 3 months ago. The room filled with the voices of powerful men and women arguing about lithium futures. Evelyn closed her eyes. She let the voices wash over her. She wasn't listening to the words. She was listening to the music of the speech. Too fast, too aggressive, too New York, too slow, southern drawl, too hesitant. And then she heard it. It was a man speaking about regulatory compliance. "The Oversight Committee is structured to bypass the standard review. We should not deviate from the current timeline." Evelyn's eyes snapped open. "Stop!" Ryan froze the audio. "That one," Evelyn whispered. "That's the architect." Ryan stared at the screen. His face went ashen. The blood drained from his lips, leaving him looking like a ghost. "That's impossible," Ryan muttered. "Who is it?" Evelyn asked. "That's Marcus Sterling," Ryan said, his voice hollow. "My godfather, the co-founder of Ryan Dynamics. He taught me everything I know. He retired 2 years ago. He lives in a vineyard in Napa. He has no reason to hurt me. He's like a father to me." "The phrasing matches," Evelyn insisted. "The use of structured to bypass. The use of deviate. The rhythm is a 99% match. Even with the digital mask, the mind behind the words is the same." Ryan slammed his fist onto the desk, making the monitors shake. "No, it doesn't make sense. Marcus owns 15% of the company. If I go bankrupt, he loses hundreds of millions. Unless," Evelyn said softly, terrified to push him but knowing she had to, "the Red Widow pays double." Ryan stared at her. The betrayal was taking root in his mind, twisting like a knife. "The Red Widow project," Ryan said, his voice trembling. "Marcus was the one who pushed for it. He wanted the military contracts. I shut it down because the batteries were unstable. He told me I was being weak. He told me I lacked the vision for necessary sacrifice." Ryan walked to the window, looking out at the city that lay far below him. "If it's Marcus," Ryan whispered, "then there is no safe place. He designed the security systems in this building. He knows the codes. He knows where I sleep." As if on cue, the lights in the penthouse flickered. The low hum of the air filtration system died. The monitors on the desk went black. The room was plunged into silence. "Mr. Ryan," Evelyn said, standing up, her heart hammering against her ribs. The emergency red lights bathed the library in a hellish glow. Ryan turned to her. He wasn't the billionaire anymore. He was a soldier. "They know," Ryan said. "They know we're listening." The electronic lock on the library door clicked. Click, click, click. It was unlocking. "Run," Ryan ordered. "Where?" Evelyn cried. "We're on the 90th floor." "The panic room," Ryan said, grabbing her wrist. "Behind the bookcase. Move!" He shoved a heavy mahogany shelf. It swung open on hidden hinges, revealing a dark, steel-lined corridor. Ryan pushed Evelyn inside, but before he could follow, the library doors burst open. 3 men in tactical gear, wearing night vision goggles, stormed the room. They weren't police. They moved with the silent, fluid lethality of hitmen. "Ryan," one of them shouted. Ryan looked at Evelyn in the darkness of the panic room passage. He looked at the gunman. He made a split-second calculation. He hit the button on the inside of the panic room door. "No!" Evelyn screamed, reaching out. "Lock the door, Evelyn!" Ryan shouted. The steel door slammed shut between them, sealing Evelyn inside the darkness and leaving Elias Ryan alone in the red light with the men who had come to kill him. The panic room was a tomb of silence. Evelyn Hope slumped against the cold steel door, her chest heaving, listening to the muffled sounds of violence on the other side. Through the reinforced steel, she heard a sickening thud, then the groan of a man in pain. She scrambled to the console on the far wall. It was a mirror of the desk outside, lined with monitors. She hit a button, and the screens flared to life, showing the library feed in high-definition night vision. Elias Ryan was on his knees. His face was blooded. One of the mercenaries held a gun to the back of his head, while the leader, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow, leaned in close. "The encryption key," the leader barked. "Marcus wants it now, or we start removing fingers." "Go to hell," Ryan wheezed, spitting blood onto the Persian rug. Evelyn stared at the console. There was a weapon rack, but it was locked. There was a phone, but the line was cut. She had nothing. Then she saw it. On the audio interface, the software she had been using to analyze Marcus Sterling's voice was still active. It was linked to the penthouse's internal PA system, the voice of God speakers designed to make announcements in every room. She looked at the waveform of Marcus Sterling's voice she had isolated earlier. The architect. She grabbed the headset. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was suddenly crystal clear. She didn't need a gun. She needed a syntax. She typed furiously, engaging the real-time modulation protocol. She overlaid Marcus Sterling's vocal print onto the microphone input. She took a deep breath. She had to become the monster to kill the monster. In the library, the mercenary raised his pistol to pistol whip Ryan again. "Halt!" The voice boomed from the hidden ceiling speakers. It wasn't Evelyn's voice. It was the deep, resonant, imperious baritone of Marcus Sterling. The mercenaries froze. The leader looked up, confused. "Boss, we're on a secure comms blackout. How are you—" Evelyn watched the monitor. She channeled every ounce of her linguistic training. She needed the arrogance. She needed the specific cadence she had analyzed, the micro-pauses, the academic condescension. "You are compromised, you incompetents," Evelyn spoke into the mic, and the computer twisted her voice into a perfect replica of Sterling's. The police response time was faster than calculated. "They are in the elevator. Abort immediately." The leader hesitated. "We haven't got the key yet. You said—" "Do not deviate," Evelyn shouted, using the exact phrase she had identified earlier. "The tranche is at risk. If you are caught, I will burn you. Leave him. Exit via the South Service chute. Now!" The authority in the voice was absolute. The psychological trigger worked. The leader looked at the door, panic setting in. The mention of the tranche and the specific command phrase short-circuited his suspicion. "We're moving!" the leader shouted. "Go! Go!" They shoved Ryan to the floor and sprinted toward the service exit. Evelyn didn't stop. She switched the feed to the building's lobby security. She saw Cole and the NYPD SWAT team swarming the entrance. She switched the audio back to the library. "Mr. Ryan," she said, still using Sterling's voice, though it cracked slightly with her own relief. "The cavalry is here." She hit the door release. The panic room hissed open. Evelyn ran out. The library was a wreck. Ryan was lying on the floor, trying to push himself up. He looked at her, his eyes wide. He had heard the voice. He knew exactly what she had done. "Marcus?" he rasped, confused by the lingering echo. "No," Evelyn said. dropping to her knees beside him and using a napkin to stem the bleeding on his forehead. Just the waitress. 2 minutes later, Cole burst into the room, weapon drawn, followed by a dozen SWAT officers. "Clear!" Cole shouted. "Medic!" As the paramedic swarmed Ryan, he grabbed Cole's arm. "The South Service chute. They're heading down. Intercept them." "We got 'em." Cole nodded. "We picked them up in the stairwell. They surrendered without a shot. They thought their boss ordered them to stand down." Ryan looked at Evelyn. She was standing by the window, shaking, the adrenaline crash finally hitting her. "You," Ryan whispered. He waved the paramedics away and limped over to her. He took her hands. They were cold as ice. "You mimicked him," Ryan said. "You hacked the audio." "I just spoke his language," Evelyn replied softly. "He treats people like assets. I just manage the assets." Ryan laughed, a painful, wheezing sound. "Marcus Sterling is going to prison. I have the recordings. I have the mercenaries. And I have you." "I think I'm done with the internship, Elias," Evelyn said, looking at the city lights. "This is too much drama for a waitress." "Good," Elias said, straightening his back, "because I'm promoting you. Vice President of Operations. No more coffee, no more hiding." Evelyn looked at him, the man who owned the future, saved by a girl who studied the past. "I'll take it," she said, "but I'm keeping the cat." Evelyn Hope went from serving tables to sitting at the head of one. Marcus Sterling was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, his empire dismantled by the very voice he tried to use as a weapon. It turns out, the most dangerous person in the room isn't always the one with the money or the gun. Sometimes it's the person in the corner who knows exactly what you're saying and exactly how to use it against you. Evelyn proved that while money talks, the truth screams louder. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes deception and sweet revenge, please hit that like button. It helps us find more stories like this. And here is a question for you. Have you ever overheard a conversation you weren't supposed to hear? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. I'll see you in the next story. Stay safe and keep listening.